Made in Abyss has some undoubtedly horrific violence portrayed throughout its series, but more than any other anime I've seen, it's completely justified and needed to make this story as good as it is. In this video, I'm going to explain the reason for the intense and graphic scenes in Made in Abyss. I'm not a fan of overly edgy content, and I don't think it's cool to just show a bunch of graphic violence and entertainment, but Made in Abyss has a specific reason for this that's beyond just fitting the vibe or setting of the story. Many stories need violence to portray an accuracy of its world, such as a war film, but many movies and shows run wild with extreme amounts of gore and brutality that is often hailed as some kind of free artistic expression, but it's usually just to say, this is for adults, look at this. But the intense violence adds nothing or actually detracts from the story overall. The mature content can immerse you into its world, and that's usually the best case scenario. The intense violence of Made in Abyss, however, doesn't just help with the immersion or anything as small as that. It makes the show. If there wasn't the horrible circumstances, or even if it was just censored, the show would be significantly worse. The first reason for this is in its writing and the way it gets us to care about its characters. Made in Abyss is an adventure story. It focuses heavily on its world building and plot instead of the characters. That's not to say they aren't good. The writer really knows how to write great characters. It's just that they aren't the focus. Riko and Reg aren't particularly stand out when compared to other main characters. They fill their role, but there isn't much depth or internal conflict within them or their relationship. The mysteries of Reg make him a little more complex than Riko. Later in the story, they meet Nanachi, who is incredibly compelling, but we are focusing on Riko and Reg in the episodes leading up to her introduction for now. The story gets us interested through the Abyss, which is just the best concept. So leaning on that heavily in the beginning is a great idea. But after that, as we get further into their training arc with Ozin, there needs to be a real connection with them that I just didn't have because of their lack of conflict. They had struggles, of course, but the Dark World wasn't truly portrayed in anything beyond some references and a few problems they overcame by the end of the episode. The reveal that Ozin was just testing them also flattened the tension from what seemed to be a very dangerous circumstance. I said in my review that Made in Abyss doesn't truly get good until episode 10, and the reason is the realistic and visceral brutality of Riko's injury. Riko was stubborn and determined to journey to the bottom of the abyss. She was kind and strong and just had a lot of good qualities, but there was nothing that really made me root for her or care about her and Reg's relationship. Until I saw her dying and Reg crying his heart out and panicking as she stopped breathing. In this moment, the shallow curiosity stopped being the reason I was watching. Riko gets poisoned with the spike from the orbed piercer, and they have to escape the dangerous animal that can basically see into the future. The only way to escape is up, and this triggers the curse for Riko, which compounds on the poison. For the first time, you could really understand how dangerous the abyss was and how extraordinary Reg and Riko were for adventuring into it and making it this far. It became real in a sense. This was a world where people died horrible, gruesome deaths, and sometimes even worse fates. And we were watching a likable young girl try to brave this world because of the call of adventure and to find her mother. But it wasn't just the realization of the danger. It gave a deeper understanding of Riko and Reg's relationship. Reg's desperation showed just how important Riko is, and it clicks that Reg is just as helpless without Riko as she is without him. While Reg has the skills to journey through the abyss, he doesn't have the knowledge or emotional strength that he relies on Riko for. Their friendship in 10 episodes is shown stronger than most other protagonists over multiple seasons because these extreme circumstances force the characters to show their true feelings through their actions. What sets this moment apart as particularly extreme is the violence, portrayed in the perfect way. It has been shown only sparingly, in a small amount throughout the series, so when this moment comes and it shows graphically what is happening, it hits so powerfully. Through this, we get closer to Riko and Reg, but we also get, because of Riko's healing time, a pause to learn about Nanachi. Riko doesn't just get saved and then everything is okay. There's a healing process, and at the beginning, it's unsure if she'll even live through it. While all that is happening, we get introduced to Nanachi, who is one of the main characters for the future of the story. It gives us time to get attached to her and learn about her backstory, while also showing the seriousness of Riko's injury, which is just fantastic storytelling. The reality of the situation is shown through the violence and disturbing visuals. Riko screaming when Reg tries to take her glove off, her hands swelling massively, and the painful situation of Reg trying to cut her arm off and break through the bone. It feels so real, and because of that, I really started to connect to the characters in a way I hadn't. It wasn't just that they went through a struggle, it was the way they struggled. Their pain was my pain because of how uncomfortable it was to watch, and that was because of its violence. Made in Abyss knows that struggles grow relationships in a way nothing else can. Bondrewd mentions this to Nanachi, and it was a very weird moment because I felt the truth of those words just from my earlier experience with caring about Reg and Riko through her life-threatening injury and rehabilitation. I cover this point more in my analysis of Bondrewd. You can check out that video on the end screen once this one is finished, but the violence played a part in one of the main themes of Made in Abyss, which is the value of struggling. None of the lessons Bondrewd teaches would hit as hard if we hadn't seen the horrific moments preceding it. The emotional and physical pain was tragic, but it also had value, as it must be faced in order to continue their journey. Again, I made a whole video about that, so I won't get into any more detail here. Getting into Season 2, we see a new side to how horrible this world is, which helps us relate to and love the new characters introduced through the backstory of Veiko and her group. Initially, we need a reason to care about them, and Made in Abyss does the same thing as it did with Reg and Riko. We are given a fantastic setting with this group, being like pilgrims hoping to find their promised land, the City of Gold, and escaping the oppression of their previous rulers. But they soon find the promised land is a much worse place than the nation they fled from. They are already much easier to care about than Riko and Reg in their introduction, but the horror of their situation just makes them so much more likable. There isn't a traitor or some kind of internal conflict that threatens to ruin their adventure, it's the Abyss itself. No one is wrong in the conflict. Everyone is justified, with Wazukan taking Iramui's children so they could survive, and Iramui's cries for justice being manifested in Fapta. All of this is from the violence of the Abyss, the cycle of life and death. The horror and violence isn't here just to look flashy, tell you this is for adults, or to be immersive within the world. It tells the story. Made in Abyss doesn't use a hollow shock factor of anyone could die. It uses a truly powerful shock factor of terrible things can and will happen. The worry that the character is going to die is much more powerful than the death itself, and Made in Abyss uses this very well. The fear of death or something horrible happening is very real within the world, and that fear is given to the audience through the intense and uncomfortable violence and situations. I understand not wanting to watch this show because of how horrible it can be and how graphic it can get, especially because it's dealing with children, but this is why it was needed in this story and executed in such a fantastic way. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribing helps me out a lot, and so does liking the video, so if you enjoyed this and want me to keep making content, you can show your support with that. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see it and probably respond. The other Made in Abyss video will be here on the end screen. More videos coming soon. Jamiao.